But nonetheless, guys, now we get to the tips for round 19. Now, of course, round 19's actually got some massive games in it. We've got Port Adelaide, Collingwood. We've got Brisbane versus the Geelong. Even Fremantle versus Sydney to an extent could be a big one. We've also got things like Melbourne and Adelaide down there as well. So we've got some big games to go through. So we'll go through them right now. So, first game, Essendon Bulldogs. This is going to be a big one. Bulldogs aren't in the best of form right now, but they are a response team. So it'll be interesting how the Bulldogs go, but also Essendon have to respond after that terrible performance against Geelong. They haven't really lost a lot of by big margins this year, Essendon, so they've done really well on that facet. I'll be interested to see how the young Bombers can actually respond against the Bulldogs. I'm actually going to tip them. I think the Bombers are just a little bit more evolved than the Bulldogs. I think that the Bombers as well have a pretty good pressure team, which I think can lock down the handball game of the Bulldogs. So I'm going to give Essendon the win here. However, if the Bulldogs get on the outside with their handball, I think they win this one pretty comfortably. So I think this will be a close one if Essendon win. If the Bulldogs win, I think they win by a good 5 goals. After that, we get to Saturday afternoon, Richmond versus Hawthorn. I think Richmond might win this one pretty well. However, with James Sicily back, I do actually give Hawthorn a lot of chance towards the end of the season when James Sicily's in the team. I know it's only one player, but he just gives so much to the Hawthorn lineup. But I do think that Richmond will win this one. I think they'll be a little bit disappointed with their game against the West Coast Eagles, not being able to capitalise on a percentage boost. And if Richmond are to make the finals this year, they have to beat a couple of teams like Hawthorn, like North Melbourne later in the year. They have to win them really well. So I'm going to pick Richmond in this one, and I think they win this one pretty comfortably. I don't really see an upset brewing at the MCG. After that, we get to Carlton versus West Coast. This is definitely not going to be an upset. Carlton are going to win this one. They're going to get a percentage booster by, I think they win this one by 50, 60, 70 plus points, and that's being generous to West Coast. They win this one well, Carlton, and they give themselves a real chance towards finals because they're getting quite a lot of percentage in the last few weeks, and this is just going to be another percentage booster. I give them a real chance towards that push towards finals now too. After that, we get to Brisbane versus Geelong. This is at the Gabba, Saturday twilight, massive game. If Geelong want to prove to me that they're a real chance towards a finals, challenger, premiership push, they have to win this game. They've been beating a lot of teams around them, down at Cardinia Park, down at home, beating up the little brother at home. They've got to win these games away, and they've got to win against these premiership contenders like Brisbane. I am tipping Brisbane in this game. I think they would be pretty disappointed by that last 7 minutes against Melbourne. They want to respond from that. And I think they win this one. Probably a close one, probably. I don't see Geelong getting flogged by any means, but I think Brisbane will, bounce back from their pretty poor performance against Melbourne in those past few minutes. So I give Brisbane a 20-point win pretty well here. I think that Geelong need to prove to me that they can win these sort of games, and to be fair, it'll be interesting who Jack Payne goes to. If he goes to Cameron, I think he would. But also, this is going to be interesting if Harris Andrews will be playing on Tom Hawkins, because he can't play that, intercept marking play. He'll have to play on Tom Hawkins. You can't let him go. So if Geelong can get on top as the tall forwards, they have a bit of a chance. But I'm going to pick Brisbane. After that, we get to Saturday night, which is Fremantle versus Sydney. Now, I think this game would be a little bit more talked about if it wasn't for the other Saturday night game, which we'll get to in a minute. But Fremantle really need to respond. They've been poor the last few weeks. They've got the Swans, who are in okay form. I mean, they beat the Bulldogs, but they're not in the best of form. Last year, when these two teams met, was a big game. Really decided who was going to make the top 4 in the up at Optus. It looks like Buddy will be going up to Sydney. I'll be interested to see if Sydney will line up with Ruckman this week, because they didn't line up Tom Hickey, but he did play well in the VFL. So I'll be surprised if they don't, because Darcy and Jackson are a really big combination. So I think they will play Hickey. But if they don't, I give Fremantle a real chance to flog Sydney, to be honest, if they don't play Ruckman. But at this stage, I am going to pick Fremantle at home. They need to respond, and if they don't, I think Justin Longmuir is going to have a really tough week inside the media in the bubble of Perth. So I think Fremantle win this one pretty well. After that, we get to the game of the round, game of the season lined up so far. Second versus first, Adelaide Oval, Port Adelaide versus Collingwood. This is going to be a massive game. Both teams hate each other. Adelaide Oval, prime time. I don't know what else I can say. It's going to be a massive game. And I'm so annoyed that the Swans are playing at the same time. I'm so angry. I'd love to watch this game. I think it's going to be a finals preview. I think, honestly, if these two teams can keep their form that they've had for the majority of the season, they play in the grand final. But at this stage, at Adelaide Oval, I'm going to pick Port. But Collingwood, very hard to tip against them. This is 50-50 in my opinion. I know on the ESPN app right now, it is Collingwood by 65% to 35%. I'm surprised by that. But the money odds are pretty close. Everything else is very close. I'm going to pick Port because it's at Adelaide Oval. That's the only reason. And Port do need to respond from last week. They were very poor against Carlton. So I think Port Adelaide will respond here, and I think they beat Collingwood. After that, we get to Sunday. First game is GWS versus Gold Coast, the expansion clubs. Look, the Gold Coast responded last week, but I don't think they do it again. The Giants are in such good form. If the Giants want to make finals, they have to win this one. And to be honest, I think they look for a little bit of a percentage booster, to be fair. I think that they can get the Gold Coast and get them at a good stage. I think that they got a good win against the Saints, but I think that's as much as their, hype around Stephen King's going to go. I think the Giants win this one pretty well. I don't know if they get Tom Green back. It was a hamstring for the reason why he was out. So I think they may miss him a little bit here because the Gold Coast's probably best line is their midfield. But I think the Giants win this one pretty convincingly. After that, we get to probably the biggest game on the Sunday, which is Melbourne versus the Crows. At Adelaide Oval, this one would be interesting. But with Melbourne at the MCG, I think they're just going to be too good for the Crows. They just can't play away from home. However, the Crows have been reaching a lot of scrutiny this week. They've obviously seen Joshua Shelley receive a lot of scrutiny for that hit behind the play. A lot of players very underperforming in the last quarter when they needed them most. The Crows have been known as a response team in the past, but I think Melbourne will win this one. I think Christian Petrarca can get it on top in the midfield and he can kick some goals, which I don't really know if the Crows have a real answer for. So I think the Demons will win that one pretty well. And then the final game of the round is St Kilda versus North Melbourne. Now, I think a lot of people would probably say this is a bit of a danger game for the Saints. And it is to an extent, but I don't think North Melbourne are playing anywhere near well enough to beat a team, anyone other than the West Coast right now. They're playing really poor footy, North Melbourne. Alistair Clarkson comes back, I think, in a few weeks, if not the end of the season, which I think it's like, bro, just take the rest of the season off. Do you want to really be there for this debacle? Just let Brett Ratton take the reins. Just let him suffer the consequences. I'm sorry, I'm being mean. But Christ's sake, St Kilda win this one, I think, and I think they win it pretty well. Nonetheless, I don't know if that exactly means they're going to make finals from it, but if they are to make finals, St Kilda, they need to get some percentage off this game. So they need to go and win this one well. But I don't know, maybe North Melbourne pull out a rabbit out of the hat and actually win this game, which I just don't see happening. But who knows? It could happen.